Rachel was a very quiet child growing up. Very quiet. And I had no idea it was because you were concerned that what you said might not be acceptable, or you were just quiet. And I encouraged that, unbeknownst to how I was affecting her. She started running when she was like 5 years old, and I've always loved to run. And here, did I cause something? Maybe. Running was the love of my life before I had my husband, my family, anything. And I always said to her, if anything goes wrong in my life, I've always got running. And wow, has that been a powerful thing?
Yeah, because running formed my identity, and I began to rely on it and running, but I took it and said, well, I rely on running fast to make me happy, because that's where I receive all this praise and awe and feel good about myself.
And because she was so quiet, I thought, well, that's the way she can speak. And when you started racing other people, I was always cautionary about, you don't be, she wasn't a braggy kind of person anyway, that wasn't her personality, but I would talk about, don't be braggadocious. Is that a word?
You can
Close
make
enough.
it a word. I don't know.
Don't be braggadocious. Don't be calling attention to yourself with your words. Don't walk up to people in a race. It's like, well, my time for a mile is 5:10. What's yours? Blah, blah, blah. Because that has nothing to do with anything or what your PR is. It's what are you going to do today on the track? Do your talking with your feet. And I know I said that many times. And what I meant was, don't brag with your words. And I'm certain Rachel heard that in a different way. It was
I heard it
shut
that
up
way
and
too.
go run.
I heard it the way you were saying it, but it kind of morphed into always do the talking with your feet. That's your identity. We are runners. You are a runner. This is where you get your energy and praise and awe, and where you will find happiness. And to realize so many years later, after recovery and after kind of moving away from running, that I can be so happy without a ton of exercise or a ton of running is really cool. But running was wonderful at those times in my life, and I don't regret being a runner.
Okay. I also encourage you to do something else, like swim.
Yeah, I swam.
And then triathletes.
Yeah, triathlons are so fun if you ever get to do those. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good variety, and like all the courses are so different, so I couldn't compare times all the time.
Oh, yeah, that would be enjoyable, except for the day after that triathlon, and I told you maybe you should eat two pieces of toast. And
that was the toast story after a triathlon. But
after triathlon.
it's okay.
We had so much fun, I thought.
No, we did.
It was fun until then.
I just couldn't be as open with you, and now I can be, and now we have more fun. So I have more questions from people on Facebook. Okay, let's see.
I've just always known that that's how these things work. Someone else can't rescue you. You have to find a way to rescue yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important and powerful thing to come to terms with. But I have had a issue of my own in my past, and I've struggled and read things and analyzed it, and went to therapy for a bit. And the most fabulous, wonderful, eye-opening, exciting day was when I realized that I can't wait for somebody else to rescue me. Nobody's going to have the magic pill, the magic drug, the magic words, none of that. I am completely and totally capable of rescuing myself, and I did. I mean, it was with help and support, not all by myself.
Yes.
But I also felt, as Rachel was struggling through this, that she will come to terms with this as well, and I had every faith that she could do it. And I hope that emanated from me. I hope I said things that helped push that along some. Who knows what we say is going to be interpreted in a bad way or a good way, but Rachel did come through it, and it was really her work.
Well, I think the best thing you said too is when I first told you about it, there was obviously a lot of confusion and misunderstanding, but you're like, well, do you want professional help? Because she knew she couldn't fix it for me. But at the time, I said, no, it's not that bad. Because first, I was in denial. Second, I didn't even realize it was an eating disorder at the time, because everything had been so gradual for me as well. Like, just the progression of the eating disorder. And I was so trapped in my own mind that, looking back now, I'm like, yes, why didn't you get help? You were so, sick at that time. But when you're in it, it's hard to see how bad it really is. So at that time I refused help, and over the next few months I was trying different diets. Not diets in the way where, I was restricting food, I was still kind of trying to restrict food. I was restricting types of food and thinking, well, this way, like if I eat more protein and less carbs, or, just different ways of maneuvering your food and the way you eat, I figured that would be the saving grace. Like, this diet will fix my problems, because the problem is my body. My body's wrong. My appetite's wrong. I still need to fix that. And when I finally came to the idea that it wasn't my body that needed fixing, it was my mind, I was finally like, okay, let's get help. And she actually took me to my first support group, which I cried the whole way there because I was just embarrassed, and I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's gonna be super thin anorexics and I'm gonna look so weird because I'm at a normal weight right now. But she took me.
That wasn't the case.
No, everyone was all different body shapes and sizes. So if you're ever afraid about going to a support group or admitting you have an eating disorder just because you don't look like you have one, still go check something out, because if you think you have an eating disorder, you probably do. Or at least, disordered eating or something.
Yes, it needs to be explored.
Yes. So I went to that support group. My mom went to the parent support group in the next room because I was too scared to have her in the room with us, because parents can be in there too. And I began to realize, as I was telling my story a little bit and crying, because I was crying a ton when I even got there, a lot of people related to what I had to say, and I began to realize, yes, this is actually an eating disorder. And then my mom and I talked with the leader afterwards, and it just hit me even more. And actually that night I allowed my mom to tell my dad about it, because he hadn't known either. Because for the past 8 months before that, it was just between me and my mom. She just didn't tell anyone, but she was there to support and listen. But the support group was helpful. And then she also got me to a therapist, and then we added on a dietitian. I continued to talk and be open with my mom. Another thing she really did well too is that there would be some races where I'd finish and I'd feel terrible about myself, and I'd be like, Mom, does it look like I gained weight? And she would just zip it. She wouldn't say anything. And the eating disorder part of myself was so frustrated. It's I just need to know because I can't see myself. I don't understand myself. And she just didn't say anything, which I think is the best thing to do. Even when it comes to eating or the dinner table or going out, you don't need to make comments about food or other people's body shapes or sizes. If someone's trying to recover from an eating disorder, just don't talk about that stuff. At least in my experience, it was better that we just didn't discuss it. Or, if I asked questions about my weight, she just didn't answer.
And people would ask me, well, how much weight did she gain or how much weight did she lose? And I'd say, we don't talk numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband kind of likes to talk numbers, but he will still tell you to this day he really doesn't understand all this, but he zips it. He knows when to just keep it quiet and not engage in certain topics. Numbers and calories and weight and just stats like that, because it's not helpful and there's no reason to do it.
Mm-mm.
I'd also like to go back to the thing that you compliment me the most for, is that I suggested you get professional help.
Yeah.
With the issue I'd had in my past, I told my husband why I was acting a certain way towards a family member and gave him the background on it, and his reaction was, whoa. I felt so good to be able to finally tell somebody, but his first reaction was, I can't deal with this. You need to talk to a professional. And that, it changed my life. From that moment on, he condoned the fact that there are professionals out there to help people deal with these things. Mm-hmm. So what I learned from my husband, her father, was this one thing that helped her the most. So we have to give him credit on that one.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's a really important point.
And another thing to note too is therapy, dietitian, support group, my mom, friends, they were all great in my recovery and essential. But again, going back to saving myself, I needed all those tools, and then I could go save myself, because I was the one who's going to make the decisions. It's not as easy to say, oh, I'm just going to decide to not have an eating disorder. It's going to be I'm going to be courageous today and try this food, or I'm going to be brave and accept my body, because that's really scary to do. And even when I did accept my body, it wasn't just oh, I accept it. It took months, but you kind of make those little decisions over time that leads you to recovery. It's deciding to do something new and different and maybe scary each day to progress.
And I think I'll bring up another idea that you can't just conquer all your fears.
Yeah.
You can't conquer them away, talk them away, but you can face them. And even when you face them, it doesn't make them go away. They're there, but you can face them and deal with them. And like you say, if you've got the right tools, you can handle it.
Yeah.
Unless you're afraid of heights. We were talking about mental illness and healing and how that goes about. I just want to make one comparison to alcoholism. Here's where eating disorders are so difficult. With alcoholism, the solution is don't drink alcohol. I'm not saying, like, minimizing it, that that's an easy thing. It's not. I get that every single day. An alcoholic struggles with it. Today, I'm not going to drink. Step by step. But with an eating disorder, the enemy is food. With an alcoholic, the enemy is alcohol. Just don't do it. But you have to learn how to deal with food. If you've got an eating disorder, the solution isn't no more food. The solution is you have got to learn how to still eat the food and make it your friend and ally instead of your enemy. And I think that's a really important point for people to consider.
Yeah, because I think the most difficult part of the eating disorder is finding balance again. Like, how much food is too much and what's too little, and how do I, follow my body's signals if I'd had all these rules in my head for so long, and that's the rule I'm supposed to follow, but I'm actually not, and this is how I should be eating. It's just so much confusion and anxiety about doing things right. Did you suspect that I had an eating disorder at all before I told you?
Not really, no.
Yeah, like I said, I hid it really well.
Oh, she was secretive. Yeah. Sneaky.
And it was so gradual, especially because I'd always been kind of an anxious person, and I had always been all about health and healthy eating. So even when I did make changes, I added more rules to my list about what kind of foods I should eat. Those rules gradually were added on, and my parents saw me gradually eating a little healthier, but they also thought, oh, well, she's a runner. She just wants to fuel herself well to run fast.
Of course, it was perfectly logical.
Yeah, it made total sense, especially for the kind of person I was. It was not a drastic shift. How did you feel about the eating disorder being a big influence on my running career? Because I'd had such a great freshman year in college, breaking school records, running the fastest I'd ever had in my life, to suddenly falling into binge eating disorder, gaining weight, and not that my times were bad when I came back, but they weren't as fast. But I guess, the question is, how do you feel like that affected my running and what you thought of what I was doing in college?
As your parents, we were really sad because obviously you were running not just a little slower, it got to be quite a bit slower. Disappointing for us because it was a lot of fun being the parents of the school record holder and the All-American statuses, both track and cross country and that sort of thing. But ultimately, as parents, you realize very quickly you want your daughter's happiness. You want her to find her way. All that other stuff just quickly faded into the background. Yeah, there was a little bit of angst, like,
I felt that same way. I mean, I was struggling with that every day. Like, look what I used to be, and looking back at pictures of myself and thinking, oh, I had it in my grasp and I've lost it. And that is terrifying and devastating. It feels like you've lost a part of yourself. It's just like losing the eating disorder. You feel like you've lost a part of yourself, and what do you do with that empty space now? And it was the same for running. What do I do with that empty space of running fast and loving it? So I think it's a big transition for all of us.
Yeah, I think it was less hard for Dad and I to see this happen because we knew that running isn't everything, and you were going to graduate from college and maybe you'd keep running and maybe you wouldn't, but you'd have a career and other things to fuel you. We knew you weren't going to make a living at running. Maybe you had dreams of it at some point.
I didn't really think about that. I was just like, I just want to be fast in college. It's day by day. I just want to be fast.
Yeah. So that loss came a lot more quickly than we expected. I mean, I was kind of a lifelong runner. I've been running almost 40 years, but I've had to give that up quite a bit too. But man, at my age, it doesn't even compare with what you went through by 21. Just, you lost such a huge part of you. The most heartbreaking part for your parents was seeing you experience that loss. I mean, it's not, I hope it was obvious that it's not, we were disappointed in you.
Right.
We just felt sad all the way around because we couldn't solve it, we couldn't fix it, we could listen and say, go do it.
Yeah.
Frustrating that we couldn't just swoop in and make it all go away.
Yeah.
Kiss the boo-boo and make it better.
I also want to give hope for anyone who's watching this who may be a runner or battling an eating disorder and trying to recover, that even if you do lose something that was associated with the eating disorder, there will be like a time of grieving, and it's scary to kind of lose that part of yourself, but it's not to say that something else won't come that can make you even happier. Because honestly, I say this often, that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, and I'm not even running. I'm not running fast and winning races, but I've included other things in my life to make me happy. And it's not to say I don't miss running and that excitement, and it was, running was such a great part of my life in those parts of my life, but now that I've included other things that make me just as happy, if not more happy, I'm off to a good start for life.
You have learned how to make yourself happy. You have learned how to replace all those things that you lost with even better things.
Yeah, that's the biggest part of recovery, trying to figure out what you can do to replace the eating disorder. Because a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm giving up the eating disorder, I'm taking something away. It's like, no, what can we do to replace it with something that makes you even happier and gives you more hope and gives you more meaning and happiness in your life? So, what's your biggest advice you'd probably give to other parents?
Listen. Listen carefully. Offer the professional help. You can't ram it down somebody's throat, but offer it and make sure that it's offered as often as you think would be not ramming it down their throat.
Yeah, and the best thing my mom did for me was listen. I can't reiterate that enough. She was awesome at just hearing me out, not just trying to fix me. She provided me with tools for me to recover, but she wasn't on my back all the time. She wasn't constantly asking how I was doing. It's okay to ask how I'm doing.
Yes.
But she was there for me, but not always there over my shoulder. So that was really helpful for me to just figure things out on my own and keep moving in the direction of recovery.
Educate yourself.
Yeah.
Find out what the problem is and then educate yourself. I made an appointment with one of the therapists in her group so that my husband and I could educate ourselves. I wanted specific things we should do, say, what kind of help we could give Rachel, and I wanted books to read, what was her recommendation for the best ones. Educate yourself, because there's nothing that's going to help like knowing what you're dealing with.
I mean, not everyone's going to have the same experience I had with my parents. So for those of you who may not have very supportive parents out there, I mean, if you can find someone else who is like a parental figure or friends who can help support you in some way, it's really important to find someone who can kind of be your guide through it all. Like, I was lucky enough to have my parents respond in the way they did. They weren't perfect through it, but they did a really good job. And not every parent is going to be perfect either. Like I said, she made mistakes in some of the comments she said, but we were navigating through it together. We both hadn't experienced anything like this before, so it's new for both of us. Yeah, and just not being too harsh on yourself if you are a parent struggling to understand your kid's eating disorder or a friend's eating disorder.
When the girls were growing up, I used to read Parent Magazine, and one of the articles in there said, you're not going to be a perfect parent. If you're okay, right, and doing the right thing 51% of the time, that's not a very high bar at all. But if you're right at least slightly more than half the time, you're a good parent.
Yeah.
And you can do good things. So, as Rachel said, don't be too harsh on yourself. Allow yourself that, give yourself some leeway, and learn along with your child.
Well, thanks for talking with me today.
Well,
good conversation. Hopefully I'll be talking with my dad soon, some men with eating disorders. I'm trying to get my coach to talk with me too. We should have a coach conversation.
Definitely.
And if you want to buy my book, if you haven't already, there's an ebook version, audiobook, and the actual softcover book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and I have all the links below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this, share it around for other parents or people who just want to support those with eating disorders, and I will be back with another video in a few weeks.